Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Max, and today I wanted to talk about which electric vehicle I ended up purchasing. If you're familiar with my channel and you watched last week's video, you already know what that is, but I wanted to do a standalone video talking about the different EVs that I considered when making my purchase and why I ultimately bought the vehicle that I did. So to simplify things, I'm going to talk about the top 3 choices that I ended up deciding between, and those were the Cybertruck dual motor, the Ford F-150 Lightning in the flash trim, and then the Rivian R1T in the dual motor trim. Now these vehicle choices and trim levels were based on space available in that vehicle and the range my family needed, as this would be the car that we'd ultimately be taking on our summer road trips. So those 2 things alone, along with price, pushed out a lot of the other trims or car options right from the get-go. Now I will say that the Rivian R1S would have probably been a top contender also, but with the range that I would require out of the Rivian R1S, we were getting close to a $90,000+ vehicle, so I did not include that in the top 3 since that was well out of the price range that I was willing to pay for at this time. I really wanted something that was around the value that would allow me to qualify for that federal tax credit. And the way I'm going to go about talking about these different vehicles is actually to rank them in different categories that I found most important when making my purchase decision, and those categories being software, price, appearance, and functionality for what I needed to use the vehicle for. And yeah, let's jump right into it with the category of software. So coming in third place is definitely the Ford F-150 Lightning. Not that there's anything necessarily wrong with the software and infrastructure, but when you get into one of these vehicles to test drive them, it's gonna feel more or less like the interface that you have with any other Ford. That compared to the other vehicles that we're talking about that have this kind of native built-up software that is made for the EV experience, it really lacks in that department. So yeah, if you do buy one of these vehicles, don't necessarily expect anything that's gonna blow your socks off, other than the very cool infotainment display that they have gone with that is kind of a tear from Tesla's model. Number 2 on this list is going to be Rivian. Now, they have really great software, and similar to Tesla, they're building it from the bottom up, but there's no doubt in my mind that Tesla still has the upper hand in the way that they push out updates from everything that I've read and my experience with the Rivian, so they hit the number 2 spot. Again, still very solid infrastructure, but still has some work to do here until it gets as good as our number 1 here, which is going to be the Cybertruck. Tesla offers the best in class when it comes to software in the vehicle on an infotainment display, integration with your phone, with the app, with the keyless entry, all the different controls that you have. They've been doing it the longest, and it is evident when you drive and use one of the Teslas that they have the best homegrown software. So if your software and the way it integrates with your drive and with charging or with anything else is your number 1 concern, you can't go wrong with Tesla. They have the best one. Again, nothing wrong with Rivian or Ford. It's just that Tesla brought EVs to the mainstream, and it's reflected in how advanced their software is. And that doesn't even touch on the self-driving capability if you choose to buy that with your Tesla. If I even made that a part of my consideration in purchasing a vehicle, Tesla software would be miles above the other 2 that we're talking about today. With that, let's move on to our next category, which is price. Coming in dead last here has to be the Cybertruck. And that's because even with its price set around $79K, at this time it still does not qualify for that federal tax credit. That makes it at least an $80,000+ purchase, assuming you don't get anything fancy when you start considering tax and fees. That is way high on the end of what I want to spend for a vehicle, and I think if they qualified for that federal tax credit now outside of businesses, you'd be a lot better off. Number 2 for price has to be the Rivian R1T. The trim that I was looking at before tax and fees was about $76.9K, so it's not necessarily a bad price, and it does get you into that qualification for a federal tax credit. It's just not nearly as good as what Ford has to offer. And similar to the Tesla model, the price isn't negotiable. This differs from our contender at the number 1 spot, which of course is the Ford F-150 Lightning. Now the specific flash model that I was looking at the time of purchase, with holiday discounts, with rebates, with the federal tax credit, had an online starting listing of right around $57,000. That's almost $20,000 less than the number 2 here, and that's before you get to the dealership and negotiate. Now, I do slightly love this new model of no haggling that Tesla and Rivian have adopted, where you just buy something online and it gets delivered to the store and you pick it up. But that's when prices are actually competitive. When you have a starting price this much lower and there's room to negotiate other benefits with that vehicle, Ford definitely has the upper hand if price is your number 1 concern. So on to the next category, which is appearance. So coming in third here, as much as I hate to say it, I have to say Cybertruck is number 3. And I said this in my other video, it's not because I personally don't like the Cybertruck. It's honestly just because of how much hate that the Cybertruck gets from other people. Right, wrong, or indifferent, when you're driving this, people around you will either love it or hate it, and people hate it enough where they might honestly publicly chastise you for it. Not that that alone would ever keep me from buying a truck, but it's enough of a negative when I like the appearances of all three of these vehicles that it makes a Cybertruck third on my list. There's also the fact that the Cybertruck interior, outside of the infotainment display and the great UI that Tesla has, doesn't really feel all that premium compared to the feel of the other two vehicles, which is something that I would really like to see in a vehicle I'm spending over $80,000 on. Which brings us to number 2, which is the Rivian. Now again, I do like the look of the Rivian. However, for me personally, it just has a little bit too much of a small feel. It almost doesn't have the big truck feel that I'd be looking for when purchasing this type of vehicle. And it is one of those cars that again screams, hey, I'm driving an EV. Interior though, it definitely out of the three, I think it probably has the most premium feeling interior. So that is definitely something to consider if this is the vehicle that you're leaning towards. And my number one choice for appearance has to be the Ford F-150 Lightning. Now, this really comes down to the fact that I like the look of a traditional truck. It's not controversial. People aren't going to be staring at you too much when you're going down the street. And it has that classic big American truck feel that people come to expect when buying an F-150. There's a reason the F-150 is the number one selling vehicle in America year over year, and that's partially to do with how classic they look with their style. I do love the little touches on the F-150 Lightning too, like the solid light bars that they've done to give it a little bit of an EV flair without making it an eyesore on the highway. But yeah, with that, let's get down to the last category, which was probably the most important to me, and that was functionality. Now, since the trims that we're looking at all had relatively the same range, the main aspect of functionality that I considered was usable space. I have 2 toddlers that need car seats in the back of the car. I need a vehicle that's going to be able to be loaded up for trips if I'm going on a road trip for the summer with all that stuff that I need for those kids. So having that available space was the primary driver in the way I rank these vehicles here. And coming in third has to be the Rivian R1T. There's no way around it. It's a compact truck. The bed of the truck is significantly smaller than the others. The cab is significantly smaller. If you look at a Rivian sized up against an F-150 or Cybertruck, it's not nearly as wide or as long. It does have a better frunk than the Cybertruck, but at the end of the day, I need to maximize my cabin space while also not sacrificing the amount of space that's in the bed so that I could load it up with all the things I would need on a week-long trip with my family. Moving on to number 2, which has to be the Cybertruck. So the Cybertruck bed is actually great. It might even be better than the F-150s given the fact that it's completely flush along the bottom. There are no bumps where the wheels are, and it comes in with a built-in liner and tonneau cover, but the cab space on the inside isn't fantastic. If I put 2 car seats in there, that's literally the only space that I have in there. And while it has decent legroom between the back seats and the front seats, if you wanted to put a full-grown adult back there, it is going to be a tight fit. Whereas our number 1 choice on here, the Ford F-150 Lightning, has by far the best spatial ability. It has the exact same frame and body as a typical Ford F-150. It's got the massive bed, which has plenty of space to cart and cargo around. And then in the truck itself, in the cab, I can actually put 2 car seats in and have a full-grown adult sit in between those 2 car seats comfortably. Neither of the other trucks can come close to that, which is huge for my family and I if we ever have to take the kids someplace and are bringing an extra adult along. The frunk on the F-150 Lightning is also massive compared to both the Rivian and the Cybertruck. Honestly, the Cybertruck's frunk is kind of a joke, and while the Rivian's frunk is not bad, it simply doesn't compare to the F-150 Lightning's, which is basically the size of the rear trunk on my Tesla Model 3. Honestly, awesome space there. So yeah, if it wasn't obvious given all the praise that I've given it and the way it fits into the things that I find important, the choice for me was the F-150 Lightning in the flash trim. Main drivers here being price and functionality. This thing by far was the most affordable, making it a good financial decision for my family, while also still being a very family-friendly vehicle, having a ton of space for everything that we need to cart around with 2 young kids. I've had the truck for about 3 weeks now, and I'm absolutely loving it, and I am very excited for all the different things that I can talk about regarding that truck and the accessories I'm buying on this channel. I'm already in the process of producing several pieces of content around the F-150 Lightning, the things I'm buying for it, how it's working out for me, so definitely stay tuned to the channel for that if you're interested. But yeah, the Ford F-150 Lightning was the obvious choice for me when purchasing a full-size EV for my family and I. And if you're in a similar situation to me, I think it could be a great vehicle for you to check out as well. Now, if you want to hear a little bit more details as to why I did not go with the Cybertruck, which I actually had a pre-order for, you can check out the video that I posted last week on why I canceled my Cybertruck order. I'll post that now, where I walk through that whole process and talk a little bit more in detail as to why that truck wasn't for me. But yeah, that's all I had to talk about for this video today. If you did like this content and you want to see more, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to see more. As always, thank you so much for watching. Until next time.